Alrighty. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Pacheco. I'm an assistant professor in biology at the Northwest campus. And the few minutes I have with you today, I just want to share with you my action research plan that I accomplished during Phase 2 of Teachership Academy. And so I teach Biology 1406, which is an introductory biology course for majors. And this course is viewed as a foundation class and a very important prerequisite for courses like anatomy and physiology, microbiology, and organismal biology. And the reason it's viewed as a foundation course is that students are asked to grasp particular topics in order to succeed in these other classes. One of these important topics deals with not only understanding but applying the scientific method. And so it's considered a very important student learning outcome for biology. The issue that I have is that the current laboratory activities that are being utilized to teach students the scientific method could be viewed a little bit as recipe books. And what I mean by that is that students are essentially given the materials and methods, and essentially it's listed for them. And so it doesn't leave much room for essentially exploration or inquiry. And so what I've done is I've developed a guided inquiry laboratory. It's essentially a new approach, essentially to combat this trend. And so I just want to share with you certain thoughts on why I decided to give this approach. And I want you to essentially keep your eye on source of material as well as on learning. Traditional labs, essentially, I, the professor, stand in front of the class and give the protocol for the day. I tell the students step 1, etc., step 2, etc. And what the student does is just sits in the audience and passively listens, takes notes, and then when I'm finished talking, they do the protocol for the day. Well, when it comes to guided inquiry, the approach is a little bit different. And so students essentially are going to hear me give a little bit of protocol, but I'm going to ask them to essentially discover concepts on their own, right? And so this focuses on community, cooperation, and truly learning the way that I view it. And instead of giving them homework assignments and in fact that they have to turn in for a grade, I'm going to challenge them essentially to apply these concepts that they learned on their own and reinforce it after class. And so what was my approach? Essentially, I tried something new, something unique. I gave students in a biology class live specimens, termites. And so the approach is I want them to essentially utilize or learn the scientific method by essentially looking at an aspect of termite behavior. Questions that I wanted answered were, this new approach, is it effective in essentially helping students grasp the understanding of the scientific method? In addition, I wanted to investigate their attitude toward the scientific method and essentially their appreciation in its utility as well as confidence in employing it. And I guess the final thing that I wanted to ask, or question that I wanted to answer, was can this new approach be utilized in not just Biology 1406, but other courses? And so what I've done is, in my lesson overview, I utilized the 5 approaches, or the 5 E's to guided inquiry. And right off the bat, when I walked in the class, I greeted the students what I consider a present. And they know this means a quiz, right? And I said, I felt like giving you a reward. And so right off, it's brand new. They're like, what, a quiz over what? And so the issue is I don't tell them what it's over. I'm giving them questions on the scientific method. And essentially I'm trying to assess their prior knowledge as well as their attitude and confidence in utilizing the scientific method. When it comes to the 5 E's, engagement, I essentially put a live termite right in front of the student and they watched it walk around, and it's something different, it's something unique. I grabbed their attention right off the bat. And then explored. I explained a little aspect of termite behavior And I said, I needed your help. Class, can you essentially help me figure out why this termite is behaving in such a manner? And then essentially what the students did is I gave them materials. They started setting up ways of testing this behavior. And what they did was a scientific method without me teaching them each step of the scientific method. Afterwards, I explained to them this. I essentially informed them that they've done the scientific method. I gave a brief lecture of the steps, and they were all amazed that essentially they did these steps without me telling them. And I evaluated them with a post-test. And the reason for the post-test was essentially to inquire the effectiveness of this particular lab. Yet again, I was looking at content knowledge and essentially their appreciation and understanding the utility of the scientific method. And then essentially they've done one particular test, and I challenged them to do another one to reinforce essentially their understanding. In terms of design of the survey for the pre and post test, it was a mixture of both investigating content knowledge and appreciation for the scientific method. And here are essentially the 5 criteria or categories. This was a mixture of a quiz and utilization of a Likert scale. Now, when it came to exploration, I essentially placed a live termite in front of the student, gave them a pen, asked them to draw a line, placed the termite right in front of the line, and to their amazement, the termite followed the line. And I asked them, can you please help me investigate why this happens? And so, this was my engagement. Right? Students were really, really curious, that they were amazed by the fact that this little termite worker is following this line. And so, essentially, I gave them materials. They tested, or essentially set up a test, a scenario of why, trying to explain why this phenomenon occurred. And believe it or not, the students did the scientific method. Now, I analyzed the data, and essentially to analyze the content knowledge portion of the survey, essentially I graded it as a quiz. And I essentially tallied up all the scores and gave calculated the average for all categories. When it came to the attitudinal part, I did the same thing for the scores of the Likert scaling, and essentially got the averages for each category. I utilized a particular statistic to investigate whether there was significant difference in the pre and post test scores. Okay? And I used the paired samples t-test for such a thing. And so the reason why I used this test is I wanted to know, okay, there's a difference between pre and post test scores, but is that difference due to the effectiveness of my lab, or was it just random matter? Okay. Now, I also used a more investigative technique, statistic, called the effect test. I used Cohen's effect size. And essentially what Cohen's does is it allows me to better understand the effectiveness of my lab, and not saying, okay, there's just a difference between pre and post test scores and there was a significant difference. I truly wanted to see the effectiveness of the lab. The results essentially were this. And as you can see, nearly all of these particular categories had a significant difference. And I want you to take your eye to the top right corner of your screen. There was essentially evident increases in scientific efficacy, scientific content knowledge, and total attitude. When it came to effect sizes, with science efficacy, we saw a large effect size and a medium effect size for content knowledge and total attitude. Now, essentially, this means that the lab was effective for particular topics, and these topics dealt with effectiveness of appreciation for understanding the usefulness and utility of the scientific method. And the original creation of this lab was for Biology 1406, but since it was effective, I decided to employ it in my other courses, specifically Biology 1407. And an outcome of this particular lab was shared with other biology faculty district-wide, and essentially the creation of the new Biology 1407 laboratory included this lab. Okay. These are my reference. Thank you.